Welcome to Keep What You Earn, your judgment and jargon-free zone for entrepreneurs of all levels. Get ready to learn how to scale your business, save money in taxes, and create a business that grows your wealth. If it feels like the financial side of business is like eating your vegetables, well then think of this podcast as the ranch dressing to make the process a little more enjoyable. My name is Shannon Weinstein. I'm a CPA and business owner on a mission to simplify money and empower others through knowledge. I hope this episode inspires you to take action, but remember that the information we share is for educational purposes only and is not individual tax advice. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start the show. Arguably, one of the best parts of entrepreneurship is being able to make an impact. And I think that's what most of us want as entrepreneurs. And not just an impact for ourselves and our family, but also to extend that impact into our community or into, those communities that may be underserved. And it's so important to have some type of mission to your business because that will help it thrive and help it stay strong and will actually bridge some connections for you in your business and in your entrepreneurship journey. So I'm really excited to tackle this topic of social entrepreneurship today with Dr. Rashida Weaver. Now, Dr. Weaver is a global expert on social entrepreneurship. In 2023, she joined the Global African Descent Social Entrepreneurship Network, sponsored by the Biden-Harris administration. She conducted the first large-scale empirical study on the social, economic, and legal activities of social enterprises in the U.S. And she's going to actually be talking a little bit about those findings today, so stay tuned. And she is the founder of Weaver's Social Enterprise Directory. She was the first assistant professor for the Heinz Institute for Entrepreneurship and Innovation that was established with a $15 million donation at Iona College in 2017. She's also the author of Social Entrepreneurship, A Practical Introduction, which she'll mention in today's episode as well. I highly encourage you, listen to today's episode to learn a ton about social entrepreneurship, how you can infuse more social mission into your business. And if you have a social mission, how you can make it known and how you can inject it into your business activities so that you can thrive both in your sales and in your service. So without further ado, let's hear from Dr. Rashida Weaver. Dr. Rashida, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Shannon.
Of course. Could you just introduce yourself really quickly to everyone listening?
Hi, I'm Dr. Rashida Weaver, and I'm a former professor. I taught over 1,000 students around the world, and now I'm a full-time social entrepreneur teaching people about social entrepreneurship, which is really about how to make money and how to do good with it.
I love it. Can you just define your own version of social entrepreneurship, what a social entrepreneur really is?
Yes. So a social entrepreneur is a person that runs an organization, a mission-driven organization, where they focus on some kind of a major social issue like poverty, homelessness, climate change, hunger. It could be anything, but they use revenue generation, so regular business techniques to sustain that organization and make a great life for themselves.
And I love that you mentioned that they use revenue generation to sustain, because I know that there are a lot of mission-driven entrepreneurs out there who have a really hard time with the revenue generation part of it. They want to serve, but they don't want to sell. And it's really, really challenging. Can you just kind of unpack maybe what you've seen and why that can be such a struggle for folks?
Absolutely. So that's why I started Weaver's Social Enterprise Directory, my organization. And it's a benefit corporation. So it's a for-profit legal entity dedicated to being a social enterprise. And I wanted to teach people that you can do good for the world and not suffer in response, because a lot of people that want to do good. They feel like they have to be martyrs. They feel like they have to struggle. They have to struggle with the people. And I find that in my personal experience as a girl from the Bronx and a first generation American of Jamaican and Cuban descent, it is much more inspirational for you and effective for you to help your community when you're also doing well.
I agree. And it's so much, I would say easier, but it's probably simpler to grow a business when you have a mission as well. I feel like it helps cultivate community as well within your customer base and actually helps drive the business. But I also see people, I will say this, I see people leveraging the social aspect of their business, almost exploiting that part in order to generate. There's almost an opposite effect of this, right?
Yeah. Yeah, some people, so it's really interesting. If you're not trained to be a social entrepreneur, you'll either do one or two things. Like you'll go with what your dominant focus is. And so some people lean too much into the economic, and then some people lean too much into the social. But if you have the training, like if you've done some kind of college or read some books or you're part of the social entrepreneurship community, which I really emphasize joining because it's a global community. It's growing. There's a lot of support, and a lot of people don't know that. And so if you're part of that community, then you'll learn more about how to manage that dual bottom line. That's what we call it. So it's not just a financial bottom line, but the social bottom line as well. And one of the things I try to emphasize for social entrepreneurs is, there's levels to this, right? You don't have to do everything like in regards to your social impact that you want to create on day one or in year one or year two. As you actually grow your social enterprise and you decide what you want to how you want to design your life. And I really emphasize that. I have a 5-day training program called the Ready, Set, Launch Social Enterprise Bootcamp. And day one is literally all about designing your life and your social mission that you want to have in the world. Because if you don't understand that, then you won't understand that this is a whole process, right? You're just thinking you just need to get up and running the first day. And it's not like that. 5 years from now, you might be able to achieve that main vision that you have, but you have to start step by step because you're learning and growing and becoming more effective as time goes on.
Yeah. And I think that there also can be elements of the social entrepreneur where the way they make money may or may not directly relate to the social cause, right? So, for example, you could just be a philanthropist, right, with your business or associate with some type of philanthropy. So, for example, like we have a relationship with, I donate to Junior Achievement, and that's a big part of my mission is financial education.
Awesome.
And it doesn't always have to do with that. I could have an accountant business that's focused on climate change. Like it doesn't have to be so directly literal, right?
Yes, it does not have to be. And my organization also. So I donate to mental health organizations, addiction, also Black empowerment, financial empowerment. So, but none of my work directly has anything to do with that. And that's a good thing for me because I don't want to have to learn how to do all those things. I'm a big believer in using your gift to make room for you in this world. Like I'm a great speaker. I'm a great educator. I'm great at writing. So I do those things. I do what I'm good at. And then I allow the other people that are really better at what they're doing at economic empowerment for the Black community, at mental health and wellness and at addiction issues. I let them do what they do best by supporting their work through my profits.
I love it. And talking about, your business and how you've grown, what got you started with your passion for social entrepreneurship where you lean so hard into that and really focused on serving them?
Absolutely. And so it has been a life's journey and a serious passion for literally about 20 years because growing up in the Bronx, I just saw so many people struggling. And I just knew that poverty and that whole space and mindset and lifestyle, that was only going to be a chapter of my life. I always knew that. And I knew that entrepreneurship would likely be the route out of that. And so I went to a business high school when I was 14. My dad sat there and he chose business high schools with me. And I went to school in Midtown Manhattan. And it just changed my life. But nobody knew what I was talking about because I said I wanted to do something good for my community, but I wanted to run a business. People were like, what is she talking about? You want to start a nonprofit? I was like, no, I want to make money because I like to live a nice life. I just tell you it's a chapter.
But I live in Manhattan.
That's one of the dreams, is to live in Manhattan. And so I was really focused on that and then eventually learned more about psychology, human development, how poverty affects the mind, and really put those two things together. And by the time I got into my PhD program, I was like, I couldn't find enough information on social entrepreneurship. So I decided to conduct the first large scale study of social enterprises in America. And I did. And my career exploded after that in academia. And now I have my book, Social Entrepreneurship, A Practical Introduction, which is based on that study. I studied 115 social enterprises in depth. I studied how they make money, all the different ways. How do they get their startup funds? What ways do they create social impact? And there's so many different ways. So we talked about donation model, but there's so many different ways. And I also studied legal structure and how that's a strategy for social entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. What was one of the things when you studied those, it was 115?
Yes.
Different organizations. What was one of the most unexpected takeaways that you learned?
Ooh. Unexpected.
I didn't see that coming. I didn't think we were going to get there. Or I didn't think that was how they did it. One of those kind of moments. Did you have one of those?
I did. Actually, I don't want to say names.
Of course, we're not going to say names. It's okay.
It's really interesting how creative people can be. And so some social enterprises, for example, they barely have any operating costs because what they do is some organizations will literally just take things that are on the street. And even one of my students did this. He literally would go around with a big van on Saturday mornings and go to rich neighborhoods and see what they were throwing out. And then he would sell them, sell the things that they were throwing out. Right. Because most of the time it's not bad. They just don't want it anymore. And so I would see things. I saw one organization that does that and they made over $3 million a year. And I was like, what? And it was just one building, like literally one store. But that's what they did. They literally collected donations and they sold it.
That's amazing. Dumpster diving can earn you money, guys, if you do it in the right neighborhoods.
Yeah, I know.
That's nuts. But actually, it makes total sense. It's one of those things that's like so simple and logical. But we especially as entrepreneurs, we tend to overcomplicate the problems we solve. And we're like, we want to solve these giant missions and change the world, right? We want to just overcome, we want to become superheroes.
Yes.
And I think you said it best with like, we don't have to be martyrs to do that. Like we don't have to sacrifice to use our superpower. We can actually go do what we're good at or do the simplest way to make money. And it's not just to make money, but it's to gather fuel for the mission. Right?
Absolutely. And so what my book and my boot camp do is show you how to do it simply. And because people overcomplicate it. And that's really that one organization that I mentioned, that is a theme I saw across all of them, is they were doing amazing, amazing work with simple things. And I'll give you an example. So Grayston Bakery in Yonkers, New York, they sell brownies. Okay. That's all they sell. They have a brownie factory there and multi-million-dollar company. And they actually sell brownies to Whole Foods Market. And it's also in Ben & Jerry's. So if you eat Ben & Jerry's ice cream, the brownies that you're eating are from Grayston Bakery. Somebody just had a great brownie recipe and figured out the goal wasn't even to start a brownie company. The goal was to solve poverty in Yonkers. And so what they came up with was, we're just going to hire people to get them out of poverty. And so they created a brownie baking factory and hired people that they don't ask for an address, because if you're homeless, you don't have one. They don't ask for your criminal history because they don't want to bar you from employment. They want to get you out of poverty. And so what they found was they were doing that and they were able to give people jobs and help them, but some of them couldn't work still. And so they figured out, okay, well, what's happening? They created a daycare center because if you don't have childcare, you can't go to work still. And so that's what I mean about allowing the process to unravel itself, because they didn't know that. They just knew they wanted to get people out of poverty.
And at the same time, you can actually generate revenue to make that a possibility, right? To be able to provide the daycare services and to provide the tools and systems that they need to succeed.
Yeah, and you can do it very strategically. And that's what I mean by legal structure as a strategy, because they're a for-profit business, but the daycare can be a nonprofit and it can actually get grants from that. I don't know if they do that, but that's one of the things I teach people to do. So how can your nonprofit be literally used to help offset some of the costs of your for-profit so that you can actually make more money?
That is super clever. Yeah, I think it's all about being, we'll say, selectively strategic, because I think people associate being strategic about this stuff with it not fitting the mission or not being purely out of service. And they're more suspicious of it. But I think that there's a way to marry the two. They're not mutually exclusive, right?
Yeah, they're not. I think that suspicion comes from this myth that money is evil. And that's what I'm trying to combat with my work is it's not evil. It's what you do with it that makes it evil or not. And also your intentions. When I was in college, a professor, I'll never forget it. He told me, he said, the person that does great things in business and succeeds and has a great life already knows that from day one. And the person that's going to do corrupt things knows that from day one. It's just all about you and how you operate. And so if you go into this and you have a really, really good heart, my goal is to teach you how to make money so that you can literally do even more good with it.
So if someone is listening to this, right, and they're saying, okay, I'm all on board. I need to infuse more social entrepreneurship into my business. I do have a mission, but I haven't been connected to it or had a way to tie that into my business so far. And I'm feeling really motivated to do that. What are some of the recommendations you have to get started and to kind of infuse that into your business?
Absolutely. So first recommendation, I recommend getting my book, Social Entrepreneurship, A Practical Introduction. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's actually available globally and used in classrooms globally as well. And so definitely get that. I would say, look, depending on your region, and so if you're in the United States, you want to check out the Social Enterprise Alliance, just check out their website and begin to just explore the different opportunities that they have, because they're a national membership organization that has really been promoting this field for over a decade. And so they have events. I would say go to free events, go to live events. you want to connect with people that are doing this work, because what I found is we're all hungry for community, and we want to collaborate, and we want to promote this field. We want to do more. And we're all literally doing good. So so those two things, get the book, can join community. And I would say even go to YouTube and look up social entrepreneurship and people who have videos on it, learn more about all the different ways and I'm going to start a YouTube channel soon because I really want to educate people on that. You want to learn more about all the different ways you can run your social enterprise, because there's so many. There's so many.
And you mentioned connecting with people, right? So never has it been easier to find other people who are doing what you're doing or love what you're doing or can support you. I think it's just amazing what, the internet can do when it comes to, moving a mission forward a lot faster.
Absolutely. I agree.
So what would you say, what are some examples that you've seen? Let's just get creative for a second and share with people if they're feeling inspired, but maybe they're like, I have so many different things I want to do. I have so many different passions and different things I care about. Let's talk about either narrowing it down, if you suggest doing that. That's actually the first question, is multi-passionate social entrepreneurs or really focused, and then also kind of how to narrow that down and go all in and pick something, or how to get started.
Yeah. So that's I created a 5-step program for this. And day one is defining your vision, your social and economic vision, understanding your gifts, your contributions to this world, because every single person, listen, I've taught over 1,000 students, every single one of them had a gift. The majority did not know that they had a gift. And a lot of that has to do with just how we're raised, and we're not raised to necessarily shine or hold. We're raised to do the norm, right? In school, you have to do standardized testing, right? But each of us as an individual with something beautiful to contribute to the world. And once I can literally find out what your gift is, then I can help show you, literally just pull it out of you, because it's already there. I didn't put it there. God did. I just show it to you. And then, it gets beautiful after that. And then day 2 is I teach about financial planning. So what do you want your life to look like? Because this is something a lot of people do not think about. As a college professor, Let me tell you, people go into majors and they're not thinking about, does a major align with the lifestyle they want to live, right? Do the jobs that you're going to make available to you because of your degree align with your lifestyle? But nobody thinks about the lifestyle until, they kind of just sort of float through life. And so that's day 2. We're talking about what life do you want to live? Because you might want to run a shop. You might want to run a coffee shop and be there 5 days a week. You like to socialize. Some people want to work online and be able to travel and live from anywhere. There's no right or wrong way. This is your life. This is what you want to do.
Exactly.
Day 3 is all about customer discovery. And this is huge because a lot of entrepreneurs, they kind of want anyone. They're excited and they just want to grab any customer they could find, possible customer, and they think it could be anyone. But here's the thing. Everyone doesn't go to gourmet restaurants. Everyone doesn't go to McDonald's. It's the same thing. The people they go into a gourmet restaurant, they're looking for a certain experience. And when they find that restaurant, they're like, I was looking for a place like this. Oh, I want to eat this. You want to go to those customers. You want customers that feel that way but you have to know how to find them. So that's what I show you. How do you find your customers? And then day 4, it's all about marketing that's contagious. So how do you become contagious, that people love you so much that they just want to tell everybody else about you? And then day 5 is all about action planning. It's a 90-day action plan. And what we do is, and I created this because of one of my classes, is what I found was I was effective of training social entrepreneurs, but then I noticed a difference between male and female. The men just ran with what I taught them and became successful. And the women were hesitant. They felt like they needed more training, more coaching, more guidance. And it was great for me because they kept coming to me and coaching, but that's not really what I want. I want you to be very successful. I want you to thrive, like genuinely. My goal 1 year from now is to be on a beach somewhere with like 5 or 10 social entrepreneurs that I'm working with, and for us all to be running 6-figure companies and literally just be thriving. So I don't necessarily want you to keep coming to me for coaching, but that's what I noticed. So what I decided to do was, okay, we're going to do a 90-day action plan, and we're going to meet weekly for weekly coaching sessions. And literally we're going to go through all the hurdles that naturally come up in business and life, and all that imposter syndrome and all that spirit work, right? Because you're nurturing your own spirit. We're going to go through that in those 90 days every week. And then we're going to address those issues. And then I'm going to let you go off on your own. And if you want to come back for coaching, wonderful. Because you will need it as things come on, but I don't want you to rely on it. And I don't want it to halt your growth.
No, you don't want to be waiting for permission.
Absolutely. And the thing is, sometimes it's the most brilliant, fascinating, amazing people that have the greatest idea. Like I'm working with some social entrepreneurs, like your work is changing the world. You are
Yeah.
changing lives. And you really, I don't want you to delay bringing that to people because actually people need you. They need you.
Yeah, I think in any magnitude. I think a lot of people, just like with business, they
Mhm.
wait until it's fully baked. They're like, well, I'm not going to make a huge impact, so I'm just not going to do it. And it's like, no, like one little thing
Yeah.
can actually change the world. Dr. Rashida, what are some examples of success that you've seen or some interesting social entrepreneurship organizations that might be inspiring to our listeners to hear exist?
Yeah. So there's so many. Seventh Generation is one you probably know about. So they were even voted like the greenest or cleanest company on the planet. But they're a huge organization based in Vermont. It's really interesting because it's like depending on how you define success, because I can talk to
Mm,
you about success in terms of wealth, who makes the most money, but I can also talk to you about success in terms of fulfillment and creating a place for just people that may be suffering in some kind of way and creating a space for that and building a whole community around that. And so there's an organization also in Vermont. I lived in Vermont for a year. I taught at the University of Vermont,
mm,
and Perky Planet Coffee Shop, and the owner was like a big corporate executive. And then I can't remember exactly what happened to him, but he became disabled. And he ended up starting a coffee shop for disabled people. And you really think about that, like his life completely turned around. And if that had never happened to him, he would have never opened that space. And he's literally providing employment for people and educating people. Because when you go in, it literally says some of these people have hidden disabilities. And so they may not understand certain things. And so you're educating people and then also showing them that that's okay, right? It's okay to have a disability. You still can thrive. You can still live an amazing life. And he created the space for that. So it depends on with social entrepreneurship, it's, you know, really, I think this is a life thing as well. It's just whatever you want it to be. It's like, what is your vision? And like some people ask me about social impact and should we measure social impact? And I think there's a place for measuring social impact, and that's great. But it's also like, what is the social impact that you want to make? Be
mhm.
very clear on it. And then when you're clear on that, then you go to your target beneficiaries and see like, is this beneficial to them? And if you're both in alignment, then that's success.
Yeah. And let's talk too about using, we'll say, social entrepreneurship. We kind of hit on this in the beginning of the episode, but using it as a marketing tool
Hmm.
and how to communicate to your customer base or to your broader market what you're doing
Yes.
and how how your service to them connects to it. Do you recommend people use that heavily, that they don't make that a big part of their marketing? There's kind of these different schools of thought of like, you don't want to exploit it to the fact that like you're using it to get sales, so to speak.
Yeah.
But what do you think is a good balance of that?
Different people do it differently in different countries. It's also culture, because
Yes.
I think one thing I've noticed about social enterprises in the US, so I work all over the world,
Yeah.
and in the social enterprises in the US usually don't lead with the social mission, and I think that's just a lot of culture, and I feel like it's actually a good thing just because of stigma. Unfortunately, there is some stigma around charity and helping people and like, pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. And so what I've noticed is a lot of effective social entrepreneurs here in the United States, they will, for example, I'll give you King's Kitchen. It's a beautiful restaurant, actually, delicious restaurant in North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina. It's a nonprofit, but when you go in, it's literally a gourmet restaurant. But the majority of people that work there were formerly incarcerated or homeless, but they don't lead with that. They actually have prayer services. They have a time for prayer. It's a God driven organization. But what you see when you first walk in is just simply a beautiful fine dining place. You wouldn't really know. And so they literally use the funds to support their mission, and they give you a hint of it, but they're not like really exploiting that and showing, making people feel
Yeah, they're not
that.
known for that. They're known for good
Yeah.
food, and then it
Yeah. And
happens to
prayer.
be that's actually what I actually love those organizations that do that, because then you know that they're not exploiting it, but they're also, it's just part of the mission. It becomes like
Yeah.
their default operation. Like that's their operating system is, well, of course we're going to go do this. Like we don't have to tell you about it, but we're going to go do
Yeah.
it. And I love the silent impact too. I really do like that.
There's something happening also as they do that, because once you start the organization and you design it on paper, that's your mission. But then when you're actually running it, say you're in business 2, 3 years, a lot of those people are now moving out of poverty if you're effective. Right.
Right.
And so you don't want to keep them stuck in that mindset. You want to show that you're actually making them more financially sustainable. But when my work in Europe, I noticed a lot of organizations put social mission first. And so like there's Cancer Research UK, and that's literally the sign you see, and everything on the store is like cancer research. This funds cancer research. And so they sell a variety of different things, but people there are fine with it. And so that's a cultural thing as well.
Yeah. Well, and it's not just cultural too, but there's also the laws in different countries on
Yeah.
how people can work and who can be hired and how to
Yeah.
like how their political and social landscape really creates what you see in the country. And I'm thinking of this because I'm currently living in Costa Rica.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and down here, so there's a couple of things that were really unique about Costa Rica that I found. And it relates to this social entrepreneurship topic in that number one, you go around and if there are homeless people, they ask for work, not for money, which I
Yeah.
think is really interesting. They say, is there anything I can do for you?
Yeah.
And I love that. The other part of it too is there was actually a drive here during COVID because all of the tourism was gone and that's their primary industry. So there were a lot of people out of work, a lot of families to support and feed. What ended up happening was some of the other like the hotel owners and the real estate agents and people down here got together and they said, here's what we're going to do. For every bag of trash someone brings and cleans up the town, we're going to give them a bag of food.
Wow.
So they created this environment where if you clean up our lovely town and we keep it clean and we keep it welcoming for when tourism starts again, right? Like we don't let it go to, you know what, we keep it up. Then here's what we'll do. We'll go get food. They got like a ton of like wholesale food. They had all this stuff. And they said, okay, we're going to go buy this and support the town this way. So as opposed to, let's say, the wealthy people simply fixing the cracks and cleaning the streets and paying for all this stuff, there was this environment created around, no, let's actually build a system and build a behavior where nobody feels like it's charity. Nobody feels entitled. Nobody feels like, you know what I mean? We were creating the habits in a sense and everyone, yeah. And it was much more of a community after that, like after COVID happened down here.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. And it's such a simple concept, right? It's like, bring us a bag of trash you picked up off the beach and we'll bring you a bag of food for your family. That's all we ask.
And that's also contribution, right? Like I feel like everyone does want to contribute. And so, yeah, and nobody really, because I feel like when there's a saying, I think it was Theodore Roosevelt or FDR that said this, but if you give people charity, it stunts their growth.
It does. And it's not as welcome here. They don't like, in general, there's a very strong work ethic here.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like saying if we give money, it's almost like a pity thing.
Yeah.
Like, why are you just giving me money? I have not done anything to earn this. Like, this is very strange to me, you know, and there, of course, there's a whole spectrum of approaches to this. But like in general, I've found that most people want to earn it in this culture. And that's a great way to create the potential to earn money. But you have to be aware of stuff like that, right? Like, it's not just about, and actually somebody that I know just poured in, he's very wealthy, poured into a homeless person here that we know and that we support. But he poured into him, gave him a ton of money. And you know what he did? He went gave him shoes and clothes and this. He sold it. He just took it and sold it because he's like, thank you. I didn't need shoes. I need food. So I'm going to, he like got him new Nikes. And I'm like, he doesn't want that. He wants food. He needs the basic things. So it's a really interesting dynamic. But I say all that to say that you can act locally. You can understand what your community is craving. You can understand what needs to happen in your community. And I find that the things that maybe you're tempted to complain about your community are a perfect way to start. It's like saying, oh, I'm so annoyed with all the trash on the street. Great. Maybe you could start a way to like what they did down here. You could start a movement to help fix that problem while also making a bigger impact.
And that's entrepreneurship, right? Wherever you see a problem, there's an opportunity to solve it.
Exactly. One of my mentors says entrepreneurship is simply bettering the human condition. And I love that. I absolutely love that definition. So we've covered like how to begin with social entrepreneurship, how to really get started, and how to infuse it into your business. What do you think are some of the mistakes that people make in starting social enterprises that can hold them back or stunt their growth?
Oh, number one is not treating it like a business.
Mm.
Number one, I've seen so many people, and you'd be surprised, like people like even reaching out to me, just they want everything free. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, but I'm like, but you have to operate like an entrepreneur. This is not a nonprofit, right? You're operating with the entrepreneurial mindset and you're creating both. You're creating value. And it's actually such a good mindset to have because you're not waiting for somebody to give you anything. You're saying, I have the skills, the tools, the knowledge to fulfill someone else's need and literally create value by doing that. So I think, and sometimes that's a shift that people need to have. So a mental shift. So being an entrepreneurial mindset, also failure. And also knowing when they've actually failed. Because I find that sometimes people think that they failed and they haven't. It's like, it's just slow growth, right?
Mm.
So one of the most, this successful entrepreneur runs a multi-million-dollar organization today, but he started it like 30 years ago. He told me that when he first started his organization, he invited all these people from his network to come and join him. And it was him and one other person in the room that showed up. Invited like dozens of people. And now he has a membership organization of over 1,000 people. It's thousands of people. But they like, I remember 1,000 people were at this one event I went to. But he has an organization in Africa, in Asia, and based in the United States. But if he would have given up just because one person showed up to his first meeting, like that's not failure. That is actually growth. It's one.
Yeah, that's just
And
chapter one of the story. Like you haven't gotten there yet. I totally agree. I've had that event with one person showing up or no people showing up. I have had those things happen. And it's like, you think I'd be 400 episodes deep in a podcast if like, if I let my first episode's downloads dictate what I was going to do? No.
Yeah. And you only need one. Sometimes it's just one little thing that happens. You get on some talk show and next thing you know, your podcast is everywhere and everybody knows about it. And now they're going through all those episodes that you've already recorded and they've just discovered you. And that's what I mean by customer discovery. Sometimes people are just waiting to discover you and you have to know how to put yourself in that position in order for them to do it effectively.
Yeah. One of the things I always tell clients and colleagues and folks who interact with me, I always say that, like, what opportunities have you given yourself to be more, to make people aware of you? Yeah. Because people will say, oh, it's failing. And I'm like, well, how much control of that do you have? Right? Like, how much are you really putting yourself out there and bravely stepping forward and saying, this is my mission. This is what I'm here for. And this is what I can do for you. And we're getting into like the marketing and sales aspect, right? But it's so key to step past that hesitation and that, and the people who start these types of businesses are typically humble. Yes. Right. There's a lot of humility. There's a lot of humility. There's a lot of understanding that I am just one person. How can I do these great things? And it starts at home. It starts with one thing. I think that people overestimate how much they have to do to make an impact and how hard it's going to be, when I really think the formula is consistency in small batches.
Yes. And also being the overly humble. And that's not necessarily a good quality to have because I would say if people don't know what you do, they can't know that you can help them. Right. So if you're too humble, you need to be out there. You don't need to be arrogant. You have to be confident and just show people your passion and enthusiasm, that you're excited about what you're doing. And I'm telling you, the third point, self-work. Spirit care. That is the number one thing that I'm doing now. And it's literally nurturing the entrepreneur spirit because failure, that is subjective. It is so subjective. And a lot of times what you think is failure is what you were told either by society or sometimes by a friend. And you have to recognize that the majority of people are not entrepreneurs. The majority of people are not leaders. So the majority of people's advice it's not going to be relevant to what you're doing. So you have to actually put yourself, that's why I said networking earlier, and putting yourself with places of like-minded people, because they will understand and you'll recognize like, you're not alone. You're all going through the same thing. But if you're talking to the average person is a consumer or a worker. They're not a leader. They're not creating value. They're creating value in their own way. They're contributing, but not the way that you're doing it as an entrepreneur.
Right. And leveraging that network too, going back to this, is not just finding out how people have been successful. And by the way, don't compare yourself to them, but also what opportunities are there to collaborate and make it a bigger mission. This is one thing I found too, is that people think they have to go it alone. I go, you might be able to find a moving train that's already going to your stop that you can hop on and you can work together to make a bigger impact, especially if you don't want to if this is super uncomfortable or this is going to take a long time to build, you can try to find mission-driven organizations that you can also partner with. And I think that that goes missed a lot, is that everyone thinks they have to start from scratch and do it on their own.
Yeah. And that's a really great point, because when you even partner, actually 97% of social entrepreneurs partner. 97%. The ones that are actually effective and doing well, successful, they're partnering with somebody. So that is your cue to go find a partner. And partnership can look different. So you might partner with a photographer or social media manager that's also has a small company that's just getting started, and they document all your work. So it's not necessarily partnering just with another social entrepreneur in terms of doing what you do. It could be you have certain strengths and you have certain weaknesses. Wherever you are weak, that's not a flaw. That's an opportunity for you to connect with somebody and partner with somebody that has a strength in that area. And maybe you're strong in the area where they're weak, and so you can complement each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you want to get started with social entrepreneurship, again, Dr. Rashida, share your book one more time, and where can people find it?
On Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's at bookstores literally globally, Australia, everywhere. And on my website, socialenterprisedirectory.com. So that's socialenterprisedirectory.com. The title of the book is Social Entrepreneurship, A Practical Introduction.
Amazing. And for those of you listening, if you enjoyed this interview with Dr. Rashida, share your biggest takeaway on social media or your inspiration, anything that you took away from this episode. Tag me and Dr. Rashida, and we will be giving away copies of her book to listeners if you can post and tag us. Dr. Rashida, are you on Instagram? Can you share your handle?
I'm at Rashida Weaver _PhD. And then I'm also at Social Enterprise Directory.
Amazing. So guys, make sure you're tagging us. We're going to be giving away some copies of the book so we can create more social entrepreneurs. Dr. Rashida, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, real talk. Our business can really mess with our emotions and our mindset. Am I right? One day we feel like we're unstoppable, like we could run through a wall, and then the next we want to burn it all down and start from scratch. Hey, I'm with you. A lot of this has to do with how we approach our money. And if you need a quick jolt of mindset habits for the next 5 days to help you reboot and recalibrate, check out my 5-day financial mindset refresh delivered straight to your email. Click the link in the show notes to sign up right now. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and review on your podcast platform. This small action goes a long way for podcasters to get our message heard by more business owners just like you. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to information about our guests and ways to get in touch with me. We'll see you on the next episode.